Welcome to the So, You Want to Be a Data Scientist podcast. Here we interview awesome data scientists and other data professionals. This show is part of the website So, You Want to Be a Data Scientist.com. After listening, take my free data science Kickstarter course to learn what it takes to become a data scientist. In the meantime, enjoy the episode. Hi and welcome everyone. Today I have Selene Báez Santamaría with me. She's a PhD student from Vrije University Amsterdam. So that might not be the perfect pronunciation of the school's name, but you can also call it VU Amsterdam. So welcome, Selene.
Hi, it's nice being here.
Hi, thanks for being here. So I'll just jump right into the questions. So you're a PhD student, and you are a PhD student on AI specifically. But can you tell us what your research topic is?
Yeah, so I'm mostly working with robots and language, and my research focuses on trust. So I really want to investigate how a robot could navigate the real world and have complicated relationships with people, just like the ones that we have with each other.
Oh, very interesting. And before we go into the details of how you are specifically doing this, can you tell us how did you end up where you are? A little bit of your journey, where did you go to school? What happened afterwards? Did you start your PhD right away?
Yeah, well, I did my bachelor's. It was a bachelor's of science in cognitive systems. So that's a little bit of a mix of computer science, psychology, philosophy, and linguistics. So it's a bit of a mix. And that was pretty interesting. So I really liked it. And then I went a bit more technical into a master's of artificial intelligence. And after that, I graduated and I had two jobs. So I really didn't know if I wanted to stay in academia or if I wanted to do industry. So I tried both. And for 4 days a week, I was working in industry. And 1 day a week, I was doing research at the university. So this project that I was working on at the university opened up a few PhD positions after a couple years that I was there. And for me, it was very natural to just apply to continue the research that I started. And thankfully, my supervisor really liked me, so he gave me the position.
Nice. So you never actually left university, right? So you started working a little bit, but you still had some ties with the university, as far as I understood.
Yeah, exactly. So I always kept my foot over there. Yeah, I wanted to try both, and I think I learned a lot about both. It was indeed helpful to stay connected, to not stop learning and keep this mindset. It was only 1 day a week, so it was a bit more playful than very serious research as I do now. But it was still great to be able to do both.
See. Oh, that's very cool. So what were you doing at the job that you were doing 4 days a week? Can you tell us a bit about that? What was your position?
Yeah, I was a data scientist, a bit of a backend developer as well, because sometimes you're required to do many things. You wear many hats. So I was in the healthcare industry. I was working with a search engine for clinical trial data. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, I was still working with language, parsing unstructured uh, clinical language, which is very specialized, and then structuring it in order to be searchable and hopefully useful for people.
I see. Well, that sounds very exciting, especially because I'm also going to start in the same company soon. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. I don't know.
It's definitely very fun. It's a great team.
Good
Yeah.
to know. So you said you studied mostly AI and then you worked as a data scientist. And I mean, it's kind of obvious the qualifications that you had are pretty obvious, but I still want to ask, was data science practice included in your master's degree or your bachelor's degree, or did you do any other courses like online courses or boot camps, etc., in order to get the data science position?
I didn't do any extra things. We have one course in the masters that I did that was called data science, in which you have your own project. It wasn't really like a lecture so much, but more like a project based course. And what my team did was we picked up a Kaggle competition that was already closed actually, but we took the data and the task description and then we tried to improve on it. So I did pick up on those kind of challenges or like open resources online, but I didn't follow any particular online degree or boot camp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also guessing that your training already from your bachelor's and your master's kind of had the same way of working with data science, and you were, in the same area, which is AI, and you kind of understand the procedures and like how everything works together. So I guess you didn't really need anything extra on top of your official training.
Yeah, I mean, I was also very lucky because the first job that I got, the one that I was talking about, they had really good mentors over there. So they did help me a lot to grow whenever I had questions. There was a great team. There was a very good software engineer that I could always go and ask very technical questions. And then my boss was also very good in guiding me with the how to search for insights, what is valuable information, what can data really represent, so that intuition. I was very lucky he helped me grow in that respect. So yeah, maybe that's why I didn't need one.
I mean, I also definitely think that it's super important to have people who you can go to with questions, especially when it's your first job or when it's, when you're just starting in data science. It's very important to have mentors or just people in general who you can ask questions to.
Yeah.
More of a more general question. How did you decide to work on AI? Was it when you were a child? But I guess that wasn't AI wasn't really a thing when we were children. But do you
Yeah.
remember the time when you said, "Oh, I'm actually going to focus my career into AI"?
Yeah, as you said, like for a long time, I kind of knew what I wanted, even though I didn't really have the AI term for it. But I even when I was in high school and I had to take one of these tests that tell you, oh, this is your ideal career. I always had very high scores for psychology or social sciences and for hard science, especially computer science, because I was very lucky to be able to learn coding from high school. So I didn't really know which one to choose. And I found this program in Canada that was combining those two and also a bit of philosophy, like I said. So what was very intriguing for me was to figure out how the human mind works in a way that we can replicate it, that we can have machines not be fully human, because that's I don't really participate in that view of AI, but more like task oriented. Like, can we have a machine that is mimicking how humans can see faces, for example, or how can they reason about, how can they have memory task or reason about information, causal information, for example. So this was what sparked my interest. And back then, as I said, I didn't really know that that was a whole
Hmm.
area that I could go into. But thankfully, by the time that I finished my bachelor's and I wanted to do a master's, I found this AI one and I went deeper into the technical side of it. But I always kept in mind this interdisciplinary view of to really have artificial intelligence, you have to know what is intelligence, and that's defined by the human mind. So having that very present has helped me a lot during this time.
Oh, that's very interesting. And actually, I wanted to talk more about general about PhDs, but can you tell us about your research topic a bit more in detail? Because I think that's very interesting to hear for people about, what AI is about, not only in like data science where we try to optimize things or maybe try to predict things, but you are working on a really different field. And I think it will be very nice for people to hear about it.
Yeah. So what I do is trying to understand natural language. So whenever you say something, there's actually a lot of layers to what you're communicating. So part of it is reference, the things that you are referring to in the real world, like the physical chair or the day of the year, or this kind of factual information that you're trying to transmit. But at the same time, you are communicating about it with a specific perspective about it, because that's implicit in everything that you do. You just have your own opinion. As objective as you want to be, you have your own lens. So when you try to parse natural language, you have to always be sure that those two are present in the signal, which is the either the audio or the text that you have, which is your data. And so what I try to do is model these layers of knowledge in. I do it in with symbolic AI in a natural in a knowledge graph. So I model that, and then once I have the structure information, then I can start doing kind of higher level tasks like reasoning about this information. Okay, I know that there is a chair, and I know that there is a table, but how are these two things related? And what about the opinion of a person that was telling me about these two things? Can I infer? So sometimes the opinion about what you're talking about is more important than the actual thing you said. Like maybe everybody thinks that the sky is blue, and there's one little crazy person that is saying that the sky is red, and you're not really gonna parse or focus on that different attribute, like the fact that the color is different. But why does this person think that that is the case? What is making this person's opinion different than the others? And then you go into a lot of philosophical debates about what is the truth, is there really an objective truth, and all these other kind of aspects that go a bit related to AI, but a bit farther from data science. Like you said, it's not so task oriented like in industry. Like I learned when you do the search engine, for example, you have very specific metrics about precision, recall. You have a ground truth that you can evaluate against. Whereas what I do right now is a bit more open. There is not a ground truth yet. It's something that is new. Robots and social robotics are still making their way out into the world. So it's really interesting for me to be able to research that, to be able to like just propose things and see how they work. And later on in my life, I will just focus more on ground truth and evaluating things and all those other things. But for now, I'm happy to take a break and just be okay not knowing many things.
Yeah, well, that's very nice. So I was actually going to ask to you about like, okay, what is the practical outcome of this? But then, as you said, yeah, there doesn't have to be a specific practical way that you can use this result. But I'm still curious about what you're thinking. So are you thinking that this will make human robot interaction smoother in a way?
Yeah, it's obviously like there is a lot of parameters whenever there's humans involved. You cannot predict all of it. So we do have to focus on special cases. And the way that we see this research going is cases where you cannot always trust the human in the situation. So, for example, you always think that a person is going to control the robot, right? The person is going to tell the robot what is the truth and what's going to happen and how they should act. But imagine, I don't know, in an elderly home where you have a person that has to take some pills and they have memory problems. So you cannot really trust the person when you ask, have you taken your pills today? Are you feeling okay? The robot is going to ask these questions, but it cannot always take for granted what the answer is. So it has to rely on other things, other opinions, other signals, special knowledge about what the person is saying or how they say these things. So that's how I see my research going, and that's the special cases where this is going to be
I
applied.
see. That sounds very cool. I remember the time when I was doing my internship actually during my bachelor's, and then in the lab that I was working for, there was another researcher, an intern like me, and then he was working on implementing a technology to see just to realize by the robot that if a child, it was a robot working with children, they were trying to implement a way to see, if the child is smiling, then they're okay, and then we can go on with the exercise. If the child looks like, he is frowning or she is frowning, maybe they're distressed, so we should like take a break or something. And then I thought at that
Yeah.
time that was groundbreaking, but now I hear what you're saying and I'm like, wow, this is like a whole different level. It's very awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hard cases where it will be a difficult nut to crack, like it's I think now we're at the level where robots can do repetitive tasks that don't change. We have them in big manufacturing places. We have them even like saying it's social robotics as well, but like saying hi to people when they come into a store and they ask like the same question over and over again. Those kind of things don't have a lot of uncertainty, and there's not really a relationship that has to be established between the robot and a person. But once you go into this like vulnerable groups, or even situations where there's just like way too many things to predict, you don't have in terms of data science, you don't have all your features, or all the signals are not present or not reliable, then you have to figure out how to work with information that is incomplete, and how to be okay with making mistakes and just establishing this relationship. So that's why it's still research.
Yeah, yeah, but that sounds very cool. It really sounds like something that I'm going to read about in like 10 years
Yeah.
and be like, wow, I can't believe they actually did that.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. Let's go a little bit more into the technicals, because there might be people maybe who are considering doing a PhD but who do not really know how it works. That was definitely true for me when I was considering it a couple of years back. So can you tell me, like, how does a PhD work? What do you do? Do you just show up to the university and do research?
Yeah, kind of. Well, now you don't show up; you just do it at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of independent work. So I have some meetings, definitely less meetings than I used to have when I was a data scientist. Now I have maybe 3 meetings a week or 4 meetings a week, and then the rest is up to me to really set up if I have to talk to someone, or if I need like if I feel like I need to talk to someone. So I have my weekly supervision meeting with my professor, and that is a main thing that I do over the week, because we discuss, he guides me, and I keep track of my own work. Then we also have a meeting with the whole research group, in which you realize what other people are doing, to just like do housekeeping, like make sure that everybody's in a good track, nobody's feeling lost, everybody knows what to do. But the rest of my time, I just have it for myself, and I manage it myself. So I divide it between looking at what other people have done, kind of literature review, but it's just like you are constantly keeping up with, because these days the research that is out there is it's endless. Like there's always new things to look at. So a big part of my time goes to that. Then once you do that, you can find challenges that still exist out there, or gaps in things that people have not researched in a specific angle. So that inspires you to do your own research, or to study a specific aspect or something. And the rest of my time, once I have those two things, then I can design my own research and finally develop it. So that's kind of the tasks that I do. And in terms of, yeah, time management, I'm very flexible in how I do it.
And what do you then deliver at the end of all this work?
Yeah, so that's again very different from industry, because I would say that is more fast paced, whereas in the PhD you have to really see the long term. So the kind of only strict requirements you have are set by the university. So they tell you, in order to get your degree, you have to have I think 3 or 4 relevant academic publications. So they have a system regarding the conferences that you can submit, or how they measure good conferences. So you have to fulfill those requirements. Then you also have a few training courses, like research integrity, or you go to talks by other PhDs. and the final deliverable is a book that summarizes your research, and it's usually a compilation of all your academic publications and your literature review that you have done. So in the end, it's supposed to be not that hard. It's just putting everything together that you're supposed to be constantly doing. But yeah, that's long term. So on a smaller scale, for me, it works better to go week by week. I did my planning at the beginning of the year to say, okay, I'm gonna have 4 months for my literature review and 4 months for my first contribution, and then I'm gonna spend like 1 month in evaluation or some things like this. But on a weekly basis, then I talk to my supervisor, like I said, and I set specific tasks for the week that I discuss with him. Sometimes he tells me, "Don't forget to keep up with your reading, or don't rely too much on this aspect or on the other aspect." So he guides me, and that's really helpful. And then the next week, I come back with the same list of tasks, and I say, "Okay, I did this, I progressed on this, and I found challenges on this other thing." So this is something I learned from being in industry that I think it's working for me really, really well.
So you mentioned that you also have team meetings during the day, but is that like, a team where everyone's supervisor is one, or is it like a team where you work on the same project and everyone has different roles?
Yeah, so you have this is a research lab meeting, and that is composed by professors that most of them or some of them are just teaching. Some professors are doing research and teaching. There's some postdocs that have their own projects and help a little bit in teaching, and a bunch of PhDs. And yeah, so the PhDs don't necessarily have the same supervisor. You usually have the head of the lab, but even him or her is not always supervising everyone. So there's different dynamics. It's a bit of a mix. It's not such a hierarchical structure as in industry. Um, so that's it's great. There's more collaboration between people, I would say. uh, I'm very lucky because I'm part of a project, the robot project we call it, and then we have four PhD students and one postdoc that we all have the same supervisor. So we're really tight, and we can talk a lot. We usually hang out way more. We discuss more of our ideas, and that helps us developing our own research. So yeah, every one of us has a different line of research. We all focus on different aspects of this. I have one of my PhD sisters, as I call her, is working
Right.
on explainability, for example. So it's also related to the social robotics, but how would the robot be explaining whatever it is that it's doing. So it's
Mhm.
again like a very important aspect, but separate from my trust research kind of thing. Still, a lot of it overlaps, so we work together frequently, and as I said, we just get along very well. So
Nice. So
that's
it's kind of like a big overarching project, but everyone
yeah.
focuses on different parts of it. So yeah, that sounds awesome. Um, a little bit more of like an admin question to you. How do you separate your tasks time-wise? So I know you said you're not teaching yet, and once you start doing it, it's going to be much more busy. But as you mentioned, then you have the meetings, you have your own research, you have to design experiments, you also have to do literature reviews and like read papers about the latest technology. How do you separate your tasks time-wise between all of these tasks?
Yeah, well, I'm a very squared person. So I put everything on my calendar with reminders sometimes for things that are really important. So I have my week and I have structured it to have blocks of time that are for reading or blocks of time that are for coding. So I kind of remind myself that I have to do a mix of all these things, even within a week. Um, so yeah, that's how I keep myself in line. I also participate in some discussion groups, so that helps when you have to actually meet other people, you have the commitment to other people, then that gives structure to your week as well. So I remember, for example, that it's Thursday because Thursday I have my discussion group with the computer science group, or that it's Monday because on Mondays I see my supervisor, these kind of things, because otherwise all of the dates, because I'm working independently, they would be the same.
Yeah, it would be so easy to lose control of which day it is.
Yeah.
That definitely happened to me lately, so
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. So what about the tools that you're using right now? Which ones are the ones that you're using often?
I think like everyone during the pandemic, the main thing is Zoom.
Definitely.
So you're used to this many little faces on your screen and a lot of things to pay attention at the same time. So it is challenging, but it is what it is for now. More in general, I always like when I wake up and well, not when I wake up, but when I open my laptop at the beginning of the day, I open PyCharm or Jupyter Notebooks, depending on what I'm using at the time. For coding, I have a paper management system that is called Zotero. So you can save papers and organize them there by topics and write summaries or notes about the paper itself and highlight them. I really recommend that if you have a lot of literature to keep track of. And Overleaf, because I also have to write a lot, reports or uh, kind of like when I have thoughts of my own, ideas that I want to try, hypotheses or analysis of anything that I read about other people, then I have to write about it in a very clear manner so that A, I can go back and understand myself what I wrote, and B, eventually I can share it with the scientific community. So for that, I use a LaTeX editor online that is called Overleaf, but really any LaTeX editor is fine, I think. And then my email, because that's how my supervisor talks to me. So I have to just make sure that I read that
I
frequently.
see. So you mentioned PyCharm and Jupyter Notebook, so I'm assuming that as a language you are using Python mostly.
Yeah, yeah, it's mainly
Yeah, I
Python.
guess that's like the language of robotics industry or the robotics area in general.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes when you go more lower level to the actual like electrical or mechanical engineers, they use more efficient programming languages. I guess C++ is very popular. But for us, because we're more like higher level research, Python is the
I
best.
see. Yeah, that's also my favorite. So we came to my favorite questions, actually. I wanted to know what the most exciting thing is for you about doing a PhD.
Uh, Yeah, well, I think I talked about it a bit before, but I really like this idea of being comfortable not knowing things and have the feeling that you can learn, like it's okay not to know things, but if you can learn about it, if you have the skills to investigate it and analyze it, then there is no limit really to what you can learn. So that's what I really like about this PhD. For the next 4 years, the only thing I have to do is learn and write about what I learned, but mostly learn. And that's great. I think there's a lot of things I don't know and other people do, so I can go and ask them and read about it and learn what they have done. And there's a lot of things I don't know and other people also don't know. So if I can find out even a little thing that is new and share it with the academic community, then that's my contribution. And I don't feel the pressure of having to change the world or having the revolutionary idea that's going to make robots be out there in 4 years necessarily, but anything that is not known and that I can shed a light on, it's valuable. So that's what I really love about this.
Nice. Yeah, especially if you're passionate about something, as you said, it's not very easy to be comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing. So, it's really fun to be learning new things. But at the end of the day, it's really about like loving what you do and wanting to learn more about it.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, definitely. And it can be scary. Like it's the thing I like the most, but it's also the thing that can keep me awake at night. It depends on how you face it, but sometimes, yeah, the uncertainty can be stressful, and you just have to learn how to deal with it. It's a useful skill for life as well. So I hope I also learned that in this 4 years.
so you mentioned before that while you were working in your industry job, that it was nice because both had pros and cons. So, what about the cons of a PhD? What is like the most boring part, or the part that you don't like about doing a PhD?
Oh man. Well, I'm really bad at reading, which is it's really bad if you have to read papers. My brain doesn't absorb information that is written that well. I absorb information better when it's spoken or just like more interactive. So that's really unfortunate because there's just like this pile of papers that never ends and I have to read them all. And I've tried tricks like I try emailing them to my Kindle and then like changing screens and reading outdoors and like making it so that it's more engaging for me. But yeah, that's the part that is the biggest burden for me. It's really tough. So whenever possible, if there is any other way other than a paper to read about to find out about new work, like online talks or demos, or if I can even contact the original authors and have a discussion with them, I really prefer that. And that's doable during conferences. So now it's a bit hard because we cannot travel. There's online conferences, and I'm still trying it out. But yeah, there are different ways. It's just that the most common thing to do is read, and I find it hard to focus.
I see. Yeah, I mean, it's still not the worst thing that could
Yeah,
happen,
yeah.
right? Yeah, so I also want to ask you about being a woman in this area. I mean, at the end of the day, you're working with technology, and as everyone knows, that's not a very equally distributed area in general. Also, in academia, I heard that the higher you go on the levels, the less women that you have in academia. So, do you encounter any bias? Do you feel any differently than your male counterparts at work?
Well, yes, I do see bias. Again, my case might be different from the general one because I'm part of a humanities faculty instead of a computer science faculty. So that means that we are in the language department, and I think even historically, that has a not such a big problem as computer science or sciences. So I do find more women in my lab, even as professors. I do see the higher level where people are not professors anymore, but even like management. It's mostly dominated by men. There's a bigger gender gap there. But yeah, you see it, and even though I'm not part of the science faculty, I collaborate with them a lot, and yeah, they do make a big effort to have diversity, not only with regards to gender, but they really try to have people of different backgrounds and different ideas. But there's still work to be done. Both as a PhD and as a data scientist, I've been able to move forward, and I haven't found that or the fact that I'm a woman to be a heart stopper for anything I've done. But I've run into many uncomfortable situations where you really wish that things are different. I've had very good managers and supervisors that have my back, but if you don't have that and you have to fight or your fights on your own, it can be pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah, I find that in general, yeah, as you said, there is nothing very obvious, but at the end of the day, there, I feel like most of the time for women, there is a higher need to prove yourself before you even start doing anything, and kind of people trust you maybe a little bit less. So yeah,
Yeah,
but I hope it will change.
yeah, me too. Like I think I can do exactly the same as any person with my same qualifications, but who is a man. But I don't know how to explain it. Just at the end of the day, I feel more tired. Like it just takes a tiny bit more energy. You cannot really say or explain how or why, but you just feel if you don't take care of yourself, you get drained little by little. So it's very important to just surround yourself by the right people. And usually, women supporting women is great. There's also great guys that are like pushing forward people no matter of their gender. So yeah, having a great circle of people and good energy, that's my secret.
That sounds great. Yeah, I mean, it all starts with awareness, right? So that's really great that you have
Yeah.
people like that around you. And for my last question, any advice for an aspiring PhD student or someone who want to end up where you are right now? It doesn't necessarily have to be a PhD, but maybe someone who wants to work in a research area with robots or with AI, for example. Any advice?
Yeah. Well, for people that do want to do a PhD, usually you start having these thoughts or considering it when you're doing a master's or finishing your master's. I always knew, I was always certain that I wanted to do a PhD, but I decided not to do it right away, but try industry first. And I really think this was the best thing I could have ever done. Like, it is, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to go back to academia after you've tried the sweet waters of industry, especially because of the times. Here at the Netherlands, you can finish work at 5 sometimes and then not cared until the next day. Whereas in your PhD, it's your own research, so you put in as much effort as you want. So that's a sacrifice. But I feel like the things that I learned in industry, there is no way I could have learned them if I went directly from the master's to the PhD. So for me, this PhD is more of a change of job rather than a continuation of my student life. And I do see how other people treat it. Some other people that just come directly from their masters, and I feel different and confident of what I did. So this is maybe not a popular opinion, but I would really recommend people to go try themselves in these industry scenarios and then come back if you really want to. And yeah, for people doing robotics and AI, the way I tried it first was just playing. Robots, they seem scary sometimes, but you can see them as toys and start with that. Like research is playing around with things, testing and figuring out if things work or not and why. And yeah, if you have a robot around of any type, then just start trying things and then start wondering like, oh, could it do this or could it do that, and you can end up with a great research topic that you can be passionate about. So don't commit your time to something, especially a PhD, if you are not really interested in it. And a way to get interested is just play around with it.
That's very great advice. Thanks a lot. And now, yeah, with that, that was all the questions that I want to ask you. So I want to thank you again for being here and sharing your insights with us. I'm sure this is going to be very helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. And I really like the whole dynamic, so thank you for that.
Hey, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to take my free data science Kickstarter course to learn what it takes to become a data scientist. See you next time.